Oh, there's trouble.
Hey
How's it
man,
going, man?
what do you know?
Good. I'm good. First of all, we're doing a Zoom meeting at 12:07 in the Panhandle. We the next one we gotta coordinate like 3:30, 4 o'clock, so the scotch is ready to roll.
I was gonna
So
say, man, a beer meeting sounds way better.
how was opening season for your opening day for you guys?
Really good, man. We had a great time.
Yep,
Yeah, it
got
was
a
really
blister
good.
on my thumb from cleaning birds.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Well, man, looking forward to the conversation. Been watching you guys and the progress that's being made. And first off, just want to say thank you for what you guys are doing. Generational bankers giving back to not just leaders like myself, but just a, a, a broad approach to an industry of acceptance into a new direction for this industry. And so, from our family, from me to y'all, hey, thank you for what you're doing. Y'all are killing it. So good
Man,
stuff.
appreciate that. I really do. I tell you what, just hearing that, it gave me goosebumps, man. We get it,
Yeah.
and you get it. We were talking about you right before we dialed into this, and I was like, the thing is, you've got bankers out there that and everybody's talking about the impending massive wave of M&A that's to come, and and I tell everybody all the time, it's not that we're dying, we're selling them off.
Right.
And then you've got people like Deke, man, give both arms to be able to, I want to be, back in this game, and I'm trying to get in this game, and people that have the desire to do this.
Want to serve
And
their communities. Yep.
I don't know where you guys are on the status of everything, but I know where you're at and wanting.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, I would love it. You have the coolest story, right? I mean, many generations just like us and being
Fifth.
Texas banking, all of it, right? And a hell of a passion for everything. Would you just start off by giving us a little of your background
Yeah.
story and give me the intro? That'd be great.
It's probably the most unique and most complex route to where I am today. But that's how God does things. And so I grew up in a small rural community bank in my hometown. Was offered the opportunity to work for pennies on a dollar, but to just get in and learn. I remember my first job was actually to shred checks under a staircase in a bank, and I'd sit there, for hours and hours just shredding checks in this little manual shredder. After that, got promoted to cleaning the windows, cleaning the teller tubes, taking the
That was great.
laundromat, and really just learning every single thing about the bank. From the standpoint of the janitor closet, as I like to say, to the boardroom, has really been my journey personally. I couldn't have planned what God would have in that. Passion started out from watching my mother, watching a great spiritual mentor and leader that's been in my life, Raymond David with Point Bank and Pilot Point, say, hey, we're going to be about this community. We're going to stick local. We're going to stay local, and we're going to grow a community bank. And I caught that lure straight up. And I bit hard for it. And he would give me an opportunity to learn and develop a passion for what it looks like for the bank's presence and lane in a community. I remember one of the first stories or first learning moments that I can remember back to with him. I used to always ask him, number one, why do you get to the bank so early? Number two, why do you park where you park at the bank? I mean, you could park right there by the front door, walk right in and do your thing. And he came and picked me up, and he took me with him that morning from the house to the bank. And we walked around, picked up trash outside the bank. And he said, listen, this is for most people, this experience is conflict. Is they're coming to the bank, they don't know if they're going to get the loan or not. They know they need a loan. They don't obviously have maybe what they want to have in their checking account. And so how are we going to help steward their resources? That's a conflict moment for most people when they drive on that parking lot or that premise of that bank. Our job is from the street to the boardroom to relieve that anxiety and that attention. And so we get done picking up trash and we start walking back to the bank, and we walk by cars. And he says, something, D? He said, every day I come into an environment. These are not just cars. These represent lives of these people that are working here. And some you'll see that's clean as can be. Some is a disaster and wreck from the craziness of dropping the kids off from school. So I like to see what I'm walking into each and every day. And I think that gave me the premise of what a real true leader looked like. It wasn't necessarily about him or his role or even the bank's asset size or its potential liquidity event one day. It was about serving the people that are doing the work of the bank, engaged in community, and how do we serve them better every day as leaders. That inspired me beyond belief. I would end up growing in a community bank, that community bank, and really started developing a passion for what would it look like if I bought a bank one day. Because I understood that vision, I understood that culture, man. That bank, if they would have made bank socks and underwear, I probably would have worn them. And so I meet my now wife of 17 years, Samantha, and marry into a banking family. So her family was also predominant in banking around the McKinney area, Central State Bank, Central National Bank, Independent Bank, which is now Independent Financial, just multi-generations of two bankers coming together. And we both had a passion to serve community in that environment. And
that first date.
Yeah,
yeah. Like,
yeah.
no way.
It does make for some interesting Thanksgiving Day conversations. That's a fact. We got one regulator in the family. The rest of us are bankers, right? But it is definitely an interesting conversation. And I came home one day and I told her, I said, Samantha, I'd like to buy a bank one day. And we're young 20s. She looks at me and goes, how in the world are we going to do that? I said, I have no idea, but I know that there's something in me that's saying, let's do this. So she took a sticky note and she wrote, buy a bank, and she slapped it on the mirror in our bathroom. She said, I got the strategy for that in regards to looking at that every single day. You get the scripture. And so I went to Proverbs 16:9. The heart of a man plans his way. The Lord establishes steps. So that plan wasn't there. That the heart was there, but the plan had to be worked out and walked out over time. And that's really what God would do from that point, is faithfully take us into seasons with organizations, banks, banking families. So blessed to get to experience my first M&A following that with her grandfather, James Stewart, when we acquired a bank in Denton, Texas. Then I'd get the opportunity to serve underneath some great leaders, Bill Ellis, Frank Shear, the Peavies, the Roseburrows, the Stevens out of Graham. Just chokes me up just thinking about their investment that they made into me and into my passion to pursue that. And so in 2018, I'd get my first opportunity. A little bank in Justin, Texas had sold, and its ownership group said, Deke, we've been watching your career. We know your passion. We know your desire. Why not parlay some of that in with some new capital, and let's do it. Call Samantha, pumped, excited. We've been praying for this now so it's 2007 when we took that first step and stuck that on the mirror, to now 2018. So 11 years worth of prayer and taking steps and the next step and the next step. Call Samantha. I'm pumped. I'm excited. I say, hey, here's this opportunity. She says, it's not no, but it's not yet. So heart of a man who trusts in his wife will have no lack of gain. So I held on to that scripture as hard as I could. And I'm like, okay, there's a reason for this. She said, but what I will tell you is it's time to start the process. It's time to get in the ring and spar a little bit. And so been just completely blessed with some great resources around the industry, from legal to investment banking to opportunities that would put me in a sparring ring with a couple of banks in 2018, 2019. Wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. COVID happens. So we're thinking this is a perfect opportunity to see what an influx of deposits does to deal value, does to change in direction on investment decision-making for banks. And I said, let's be patient and let's watch. And throughout that time, I'd identified several community banks I was watching as targets, saying, well, what could we do if we had this bank? What could we do if we had this bank? My operations director, Lindsay Pels, grew up in the same bank as me, in the same hometown as me. We'd sit at the dinner table and we'd play bank, almost like playing simulation. Like if we're at Tech Banking School or Swigsby, we'd play bank. And we'd talk about it and we'd walk through it. What about the personnel? What about change management? What about liquidity? What about this? And so I kept looking at these targets over time. And for some reason, a small little community bank in Groom, Texas, I just was pulled to that. I kept looking at the bank in an aerial on Google Maps. And I would look and I would say, there's been organizations in the past try to buy this bank. There's been people that wanted to obviously take this thing, pull it back to Dallas and see what happens, pump it with 50, 75 million in capital, pump and dump and roll. But I kept looking and I would see section after section of land, generations of commitment to not only the local community, but to the region. And that's what we had back when I was inspired in community banking. We had that same foundation of people that played the long game, of people that wanted to invest and reinvest in the socioeconomic and the economic development of the community. And so we would start having conversations, ended up connecting with the community, with some of those leaders and those generational families, and said, hey, instead of just taking this thing and taking it back to Dallas or taking it to Houston or San Antonio, why don't we build something here that we can be proud of, and generations of our family, generations of legacy shareholders in this region can be proud of. And so that's my story in under 5 to 7 minutes. But it's just been an amazing journey, quite frankly, with God in that relationship through prayer. Seen some great obstacles, learned a lot, and also been able to see some opportunities in the industry. So it's kind of the Deke's life in a nutshell for the past 17 to 20 years. Yeah.
I love it, man. Awesome story, by the way. But I want to ask you, so something I just get creamed with all the time personally, and I think from talking to everybody, this sort of fight between urban and rural, which I think somewhat fight between, to a certain extent, technology and maybe personnel, right?
Sure.
What boots on the ground? What should we automate? Right. I mean, I think about years ago, my early days in mobile, and I mean, I think we maybe made a mistake back then, right? We were actually disintermediating the bank relationships to a certain degree. In other areas, like mobile deposits, a good example, that really held up, right? But what do you think about that, right? Because you've kind of had a similar track to me, lived a little bit of all the different sides. Where's that balance?
So I've probably got a more of a unique perspective than most community bankers, having spent some time inside of the credit union world. So, black sheep of the family, I did spend some time in a credit union and in a QSO.
They make him sit at the regulator table.
No, he sits at the kid table, right?
I'm back. I mean, I'm back where I ought to be, right? Yeah. But I did spend some time in that industry and great learning experience that really kind of hits on what you're talking about. Is the credit union industry has embraced technology where banking has been slow to adapt. Part of that scalability, part of that is the mix and makeup of earnings and so forth. But I think if we're talking generationally in banking, we were very customer service oriented, very hands-on, very people driven, very relational. And so even to today, a lot of my mentors and older bankers are really reluctant to invest in something that is outside of something that they know and feel comfortable with. I mean, most of the technology that we implement in banking is actually owned by a QSO, if you follow the ownership back, which is then owned by a credit union. So that's kind of awkward. But for us to adapt that between rural and urban, it really depends upon what I think your strategy and your culture and your philosophy of banking is. And, I've been asked that along the course of 18 years is what's that philosophy of banking? And I find ourselves, or at least myself, I can't speak to the industry, but I can speak to myself on how I view it is we have to embrace technology and be forward looking. We have to understand that what it doesn't change or take away from a person's ability. It actually enhances their ability to learn and develop into new areas of the bank. It's the same thing with succession. A lot of why do we go from 9,000 charters insured to 4,700? Majority of that is a lack of succession and planning to handle that change. And so we as bankers have to adapt in regards to technology and see, okay, yes, an ITM does help us drive efficiency. Yes, it still gives a job. I'm using an ITM as an example. But at the end of the day, that takes it from a management standpoint or maybe a maintenance standpoint to a revenue opportunity for the bank to continue to grow and scale. And so it's about the embracement in regards to philosophy of banking and what are we trying to do.
So good, man. So you watch the credit union industry, they've lost a lot of it. I mean, almost lockstep with the banks as far as, so it's not just a customer versus a member or an ownership succession, although that is a huge piece. But you also, when it comes to technology, the QSO allows credit unions to move like a flock of birds.
Oh, they've been together better than we do.
They damn sure do. And so we saw that early on, and we're like, we talk about bankers helping bankers. That's our version of a QSO of why we thought there was a value in trying to do that for bankers. And it's allowing the bankers now to embrace not just technology, the right technology. And that right there is the whole thing, is because everybody's got a different opinion. Guys, there's a mathematical way where you can tell you which is the right opinion and which is the wrong opinion. And when we can present that to the bankers, is this is tried and proven mathematically. This is the way, instead of just saying technology, it's this technology combined with that technology is a winner.
Well, I like
bigger earnings.
I like Deke's point. I think, technology should make the people go further, right? And or free them up to go further in other areas. I love that. And then I think the idea of, if as a wonderful byproduct it drives efficiency, we've won, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a win-win. The key is it right for you and for your organization? And is it, and the fear factor of it is, does this take us from this lane way over here to this lane, when in reality it just helps us run better on the lane we're already on. And so I think vendor management's key in that too, is finding the right partner. And I say that I've posted about that. You guys have been kind enough to share stuff like that I've posted in regards to partnership, but it really is a partnership. It's not a transactional relationship. It has to be a partnership that wants to add to the value of the shareholder, add to the communities that we're serving, and investing into those people's financial journey, whether that's individual or whether that's, from a business perspective. And so, I've seen it from the standpoint of the small banking, where there's files stacked all over desks, to, the credit union, where you look at one credit report and you've got 12 different products offered in less than 5 minutes. And so it's that balance between, I think that's the important key, especially with technology, but really in regards to strategy is balance for what you're trying to achieve.
Well, I think things are a lot more differentiated today in banking than everybody maybe recognizes. Those of us that have around it a while, right? I think, to the point, I mean, a community bank, if you just grabbed one out of a hat 15, 20 years ago, probably looked pretty similar.
Yeah.
But through M&A and everything else that we've seen, he talks a lot about kind of the best of the best, or the strongest of the herd is really what's left. And that tends to be a pretty differentiated bank, right? Yeah. Maybe they're leaning on ag, or maybe they've got a bunch of property managers or something. The technology has to fit.
An ag bank is still a business bank.
Right. I agree.
And everybody that just thinks this is about the consumer, it's about consumer. No, it's about business.
I agree.
And if you don't focus towards that, swim to where the puck's going to, skate to where the puck's going to be on that piece alone, it'll wipe you out.
Well, I think that's to Deke's point on community, right? And getting together with the business leaders and driving community forward. I mean, that's what ultimately everybody in a small town is trying to do.
I've never seen a bank that did well on the business side that failed on the consumer side, ever. But I've seen a bunch that went the other way and lost on the business side, and that's a mistake. It doesn't mean you have to be 100% focused. You're right. There's a blend. There's a mixture that works here. But on the technology front, it works best when we lead that way. And you'll notice as you go through all of this, the banks that sell are the banks that thrive, right? And all of this comes back to the, picking the right technology, making the right partnerships that are good for, let's just say, banking. Obviously, if it isn't good for your bank, it's not a great fit. I don't focus too much on the one-off. Everybody in banking, that's the problem, is we all think we're a one-off. When you look at the credit unions, they don't see themselves as a one-off. That's why they flock together and work together so better. And we aren't either. We are much more flocked than we think we are. Everybody wants to be the individual, and I'll be the guy that spurs this new technology. And I mean, hey, I'm all into bass. I'm all into all kinds of different things. I'm a technology nut when it comes to banking. But there are things that don't work or take too long. And there are things that are super successful and don't take that long. Well, and that are also way less expensive than they used to be. And so we have this delayed narrative where we scare the hell out of everybody with old news that doesn't really apply anymore. And there again, it kind of slows our flock down, right?
Yeah.
And most importantly, I want to say what we need is people like you that, man, have a passion to want to be here. You know, if you're playing NFL for money, man, I'll play for free and take your spot. You know, I'd love to be quarterback of the Cowboys, right? So there's a lot of things out there. You have to have a desire to want to do. And if you don't have a desire to want to do it, get the hell out of the way and hand it over to the next guy that does. And let us that want to focus on this community of community banking together to just beat the hell out of the people that this is what kills me is Wells Fargo has done so much damage to people and they still have a charter. And community banks are like, how do we compete? Don't do that. Would be a good start, right?
Well, I'm reading a book that was given to me by a good mentor and a guy who's spoken into my life a lot here recently. It's The Lost Bank. I don't know if you guys have ever read that. If you haven't, it's the story of the rise and scale and ultimately the fall and failure of Washington Mutual. And it talks specifically about periods of the bank's opportunity and their focus and what they did well and what they missed on. And to your point, Dave, you're talking about to serve communities. If we're going to leave the word community beside banking, to serve communities, we have to be willing to step outside of our own comfort zone. And we have to be willing to embrace the need of the community that we're ultimately called to serve. And so just like here, and I'll give you a great example of the Panhandle, how uniquely different it is from DFW or what I still call North Texas. I mean, that's Southern California for the most part right now, or at least that's what it looks like when I go into there. But, it's definitely not where I grew up in horse country. But your model has to fit and has to truly serve and impact the communities. And in order to do that, you have to have passion because it takes it. When you're done and you got to go farther, that passion and that drive to really not just scale a balance sheet, grow earnings for shareholders. Yes, absolutely. We are a bank. We're not a non-for-profit or a nonprofit. But at the end of the day, we want to see lives transformed. We want to see communities transformed, and we want to exist. And so if we're going to exist, if we keep watching the ratios and the numbers, I mean, 20 years and you got the consolidation we have in charters, that doesn't say a whole lot for the next 20 years when de novo, numbers are where they're at. And so how do we exist? How can we do what we do better? How can we learn in leadership from the boardroom to the teller line on how to adopt and adapt with the technology we adopt? And so I think that's critical for us. And what you guys are doing with the community, it's very similar to that QSO environment. And in seeing that, you're spot on, Dave, is they have not only embraced the people helping people movement, but they're trying to embrace the credit unions helping credit unions movement. And we as banks, my youngest mentor is 72 years old. And so they range from 82, 83 to 72. And so I get a lot of the old war stories. I get a lot of the stories of, back in the bond days or back when everybody was carving out this little niche of what they could do better versus this person doing better. But what I've found through a journey in leadership, Dave, is 100% what you're talking about. There is a collective spirit within our industry, specifically speaking to community banking, that says, how do we band together and how do we stick together? And I think what we're starting to see is not just the greatest wealth transfer. That's what we're going to experience in the next 3 to 5 years, but also the most vital transfer of informational wealth. So it's financial, but it's also informational in regards to up and coming leaders within the industry. And we got to pay attention to some things we need to learn from in our past. We tend to be creatures of habit, cyclical. Every 5 to 10 years, there's that oops. But we have to be willing to embrace and adopt some new ways and some new opportunities to grow. And I think that's to complement what you're saying when you say, if you don't have passion, it's really if you don't want to put the effort in.
It's me and him.
Grow yourself. If you're not going to grow yourself, you're not going to grow your bank. That's just plain simple.
Dinner's hit me up a bunch of times for 15 years now, but why don't we start a bank? Why don't we run? And I'm like, we'd probably kill each other. But at the same time, he sees community like technology means the community is a whole yes, man. We can do everything there. And I'm looking more at the community, right? And at some point out there, it's like the light bulb, I think, hit for both of us that it's a larger community on the technology front. Cool. And then I can still serve my local community. I can go out there and help the cheerleaders. I can go out there.
That's how all three of us live our lives, right?
And we now see it all as a uniquely different picture than what we used to see it. It's not an either or anymore. It's a both.
Yep.
And to be able to put it all together, it's like, okay, that's when we start looking at people that have done that and how do they, oh my God,
well, the numbers. Give you a great one.
But I mean, here's what's great. You go back to the financial stuff after you start kind of playing with that mindset.
He's rolling.
Man, I mean, earnings ratios are just 1%, 1%, 1%. And it's like, I'll be damned. That is exactly how to do it.
Mm-hmm. If you look at, okay, so to your point of that servant mentality and the passion, right, as well as how we reach different communities with technology, I was thinking about, I saw both of you guys commenting on Christopher Willison's doing the 40 days of prayer for community banking.
Yeah.
Speaks to what Deke's saying of, you talk about the guts it takes stepping out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
Sharing that. And then also in the community building of IBAT in Texas, right? Yeah. And with a good message that I think is inspiring of that passion in the community. It just, all that wrapped together, I think is a really
Christopher hit me up with that idea. I was like, what do you think? And I mean, it took me about a half a heartbeat. And I'm like, absolutely a good idea. Yeah. But my question is, are we desperate? Are we praying for community banking, or was this?
It's praying for the communities.
Okay, man. And he's done such a great job with that. He's such a good leader.
So his message, his video message, I believe today said, what his during these 27 to 40 days and in 40s, there's no specific number with 40, but it's long enough to build a habit. Number one, it's a commitment that is a true commitment. Some are going to fall off and jump back on. And so it's long enough to where you can have that. But bottom line, he challenged us, what areas have God grown your opportunity to focus on him in this season? And, I think that's one thing I could say that through this journey, not just with the network that is built with IBAT and the relationships that are developing, but across our industry as well, when you've got different organizations jumping in, different community bankers leaguing together and praying together. That's unity. And that's, for us, each one of us, that looks a little bit different. My 40 days are going to look different than y'all's 40 days, but what it is going to do is it's going to allow God to focus us on what that season is in our leadership, what that season is in regards to the people in the community that we're a part of. And what's our task going forward, and how are we going to lean into him and depend into him further. So it's been a great season. Just to be honest with you, Dave, I think that was definitely a bold step made by Chris, and I compliment him for that. And it's not sitting here waving a flag saying, hey, this is what I think, this is how you ought to think. It's challenging us to grow, similar to what technology is, challenging us to take a step. And oftentimes the simplest steps are the ones that make the biggest impact. Prayer being one. It's a conversation. And that conversation leads to another conversation that leads to opportunities that we may have never had. And I think that's kind of the mindset and philosophy of what this whole thing is built around is, listen, I mean, you don't have to go out here and convert your bank to a FinTech bank. That's not it. It's, how do you understand technology? So remove the financial piece of it. Everything that we have is technology. I mean, that phone knows exactly where I'm at 24 hours a day. So we have an iPhone, but how for us to bring in some technology, we'll use it personally. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it can help me run a bank better, or if it can lead to the results to help us market and, communicate more effectively to our customers and to our shareholders and to our communities. I'll use it, but will I implement it, and will I lead and spearhead that? And so It's just a step, just like 40 Days of Prayer is take a step, learn and grow, try it. Again, find the right partner. But from Chris's perspective, Jesus is a pretty good partner. So he's been good to us. I know he's been good to you guys and y'all's family as well over the last 40 days and beyond.
No, I appreciate it, man. Hey, I want to give you a chance, man. A couple of minutes. Final thoughts. Anything on your mind, man? Whatever you're seeing, thinking, anything you want, man. Just final thoughts.
The upsets in football over the weekend.
Hey, you know,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So first of all, it is from a leadership perspective, we're in football season. And I had this conversation with our team earlier today, and I think it's so applicable to what we're walking through in community banks, specifically rural or urban community banks, but smaller community banks in scaling and really seeing that balance sheet start to grow. There's a transition for every team. So remove the word bank, just put in the word team. Going from a foursome on a golf course into a basketball team. That foursome on a golf course is a very tight knit, very, talking every day. How is this all working? That basketball team, you got some players out there on the court. You got some sitting back. You got the substitutions happening. You got the yelling at the refs, all that stuff. And then there's a football team. The football team's got offense. It's got defense. It's got special teams. It's got the marketing department. It's all that. And so I think one of the ways that I'd say old school philosophy of banking, what's been poured into me, has been able to embrace some of the direction that you guys are leading in, is the fact of, I know we have to move as a team from here to here and here. And we, in any team, can't do it alone. And so are we ready to be a football team with all that? Some community banks just aren't, especially rural community banks. But they have the opportunity to move from a foursome on a golf course, having a management meeting every Monday morning, every Tuesday morning, every Wednesday morning, looking at past due reports, to a basketball team and run it effectively if they'll merely take a step. And that's, goes back to what you were saying, Dave, is you got to have the passion and the faith to take that step. But you've also got to have the drive to say, you know what? It's going to make our organization better. It's going to make our communities better. It's going to make us better as leaders. And so if we quit learning, we might as well get out of the seat and let somebody else come in there and do it, to your credit, Dave. But to embrace that and say, what would, instead of it can't or won't, what would happen if we took a step and learned and started, even embracing a new way of banking doesn't mean that we've changed who we are. It means that we're trying to provide a better solution in the world that we're actually banking in today.
I want to compete. I want to take.
You gotta want to.
This is the things that actually leads to more profits. And when there's people out there, whether it's us or somebody else, that dying to help you, let people help each other. Back to that community of leadership. Back to the leadership of leadership. But each one of those people have to create leadership inside of their own team. That creates a willingness to want to. I don't want to compete. I want to kick their ass. I want to dominate. I want to take Wells Fargo out of business. And it's like, well, you're a little tiny bank in nowhere. Well, we're not going to get there if we don't try. I can tell you that. And the people that do these things, there was a moment where somebody said it can't be done.
That's right.
That's the worst thing you can tell a banker.
I think that right there is a testament to you, Deke, and I thank you to you as well for being here. But most importantly, I think because I feel this myself, being that, fifth, sixth generation and having those older mentors and facing some headwinds in a different time. I know the feeling, man. So I appreciate the passion, everything you guys do. Keep it up.
Well, I think if we're willing to learn and grow from one another, and to your credit, Dave, we're better together. It's simply put. And if we'll stick together as community banks and we'll learn from each other and we'll invest into each other, we'll be just fine.
You bet.
Scalability will take care of itself over time. We'll be just fine.
That's right. Well, I'll see you in a week or two.
Let's rock and roll. Looking forward to it,
man. Thanks a bunch.
Take care.
Yeah.
You've been wanting to feel that hand every time you go by. I see your eyeball on it.
It's terrible.
It's not a terrible. Rookie move.
Tell me.
Rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Can't even spell
It's a rookie
anymore.
hat.
I haven't been a rookie in so long. I don't even know how to spell it.
Uh-huh.